Welcome, Libby's disciples. I'm going to do a little comparison on sort of stat-based data. I know my dog just picks winners, but every once in a while we'll want to look at some stat-based stuff to increase the pools that you can pick from. And so what I've got out here, data-wise, this is a collection of data from 1985 to current. And I've got a team like Arizona, and they went 5-11 that year, normal games. And this is their ATS win-loss was also happened to be 5-11. Not everybody. You see, the next year they were 4-12, but their ATS was, or against the spread, was 7-9. Points for 278, points against 414. So that's going to lead to a losing season, allowing a lot more points than getting them. So basically, I'm calculating win percentage, the ATS win percentage, points per game, points against a game, and then going to do some correlation. I was also going to do the lines, the average line. So just to get some of those charts. And what does the data look like when you do that kind of stuff? Now I've plotted, let's see, it's not 32 teams because 1985, I think there were only 30 teams. But if we go down the list here, you get 940 sample seasons. And this is what the chart looks like if you were to plot the win percentage against the ATS percentage. So in general, and I put a linear line on all my bar graphs here. So yeah, this is not a bubble chart where this could have multiple occurrences, and doesn't grow in size. It's just highlighting where your extremes are. Of course, down here we've got a, this is the win percentage down here. Let me correct that, because we've got a 0, and nobody's ever gone ATS 0, but a team did go 0, and I think it was Detroit, and we all remember probably the year they did that. At the other extreme, we have one, or at least one undefeated team, probably just the one, the Patriots. I think that was 2007. We all remember those. We also remember the extremes there, but in terms of win percentages, ATS, which are this y-axis, but you can see they have a low and about 20, a little bit under. Somebody went 187.5, so I don't know what that equates to, and 920. So someone probably won 15. That was pretty extreme in terms of highs and lows. But in general, the trend, although you can't always beg upon it, but if this is your ATS on the y-axis, you're looking for 52.3. So a little about quarter of the way between the 0.5 and the 0.6 would be. So sort of this line is probably just above. This is 0.533. If you look at this particular row, you only got 16 games, and then sometimes with the ATS there are some pushes, so it's not like you're going to get a lot of granularity with each jump here. So anywhere where my cursor is here is sort of the winners. So these are all winners, and these are all losers in terms of if you put money on a game at 110 odds, you need to win slightly more, 53%, 52%. So just these are good winners, and these are better winners up here. So what you get to see is that for the most part, the trend with some r-squared factor of not a high correlation, but 0.36 or 36% correlated, is that teams that win outright, teams that win in the public, or what you see on the scoreboard, tend to win ATS, and teams that lose tends to lose ATS. So winners win and losers lose. So that you don't want to go out and pick every single underdog, or every single person who's not favored in games. You want to pick teams that are winning, winners in the season. And again, these are end of season stats, because I'm just looking at the entire season. And what I'm going to prove in this is some of the fallacies of just because so should you pick, this line crosses as a linear trend, crosses about the 60 percentile actual win. So if a team is 60% or better, should you bet them throughout the season? And the answer is going to be no. But if you knew that that team was going to end up 60% at the end of the season, then they were probably a good bet throughout the entire season. So that's really hard. I mean, let's say a team is 2-2, you don't know that they're going to end up 10-6. But the ones that do tend to win ATS. Well, that always makes sense. If they're 4-0, then there's a good chance they're going to be a winning team after 4 games. But you needed to bet those 4 games and then bet the rest of the games, and you'll probably be a winner. There are some that are out here where they were winners, but they weren't winners against the spread, or they went 8-8 or 7-7. A lot of those. So you got to watch it, because 7-7, 8-8, you're losing money. But that's the general trend. And so in general, if you ever hear people say don't pick, people that and usually the public likes winners, they Denver's and your San Francisco's and people that are, Patriots, they tend to pick those games. So it's kind of perplexing that those tend to being, you always think it, Vegas will figure that out, and they'll, the public likes those teams, and the public's like winners, but those winners also win ATS. So it's an interesting stat to look at. Let me look at a couple other charts, because I talked about points for against the ATS win percentage. So the points for are down here, and basically this is the average points per game over an entire season. And you see some of the lows were like 8.75, and some of your highs are up in the 30s. So a lot of your prolific offenses are out here, and your dud offenses are out here. The guys that couldn't beat themselves out of a paper bag. Maybe they have a defense, maybe they don't. And here's your win percentage again, ATS win percentage. That's what we care about. And again, you see a linear trend. 0.17 correlation for points for. So offense has a 0.17, or at least people can score. Score for has a 0.17 correlation. And again, the better the offense, the more they win. Matter of fact, let's see, here's your 53s again, right? So you're going to need someone who averages, 24, 25 points a game, starts to be on that trending. Again, if you pick teams that are over 24, 25, hopefully I'll get into some of that sort of real simulation as they're going through the season. But if you knew they were going to end up with 24 or 25 points at the end, average at the end of the season, then yeah, they would have been good to pick out that season. Points against is the opposite of that, right? The lower the points they allow against, the higher their win rates. And you see these guys out here are great defenses, and these guys are not so good defenses, giving up points per game. The correlation is slightly higher, so defense wins games. They always like to say that, right? Well, there is some truth to that. Defense has a slightly higher correlation than points you score, so this has a little bit more importance. Very long. Neither one is as good as the win-loss record, but as we saw on the first chart. But this one is better, and went from 0.17 to 0.26. Again, I want to bet the farm on it, but in general, 55% hits you at 20 or less over all these years. So a lot of data. So let's see what else I had. I had the line. We'll save that one for another discussion. So there's some basic stats on the season, on line and not on line. Okay. So you would think that with the previous data I gave you that, if you scored, 24 or better, and you also held the opponents to 20 or less or better, your average for the season, that would be a good bet. But I've got a little script here, and here's all the game data, and all I'm going to do, I'm going to run this script. And this script is basically saying if your average points for the season is greater than 24 or greater than equal, and your points against are less than equal to 20, and the game is greater than 1, so after the first game through the 16th game, go ahead and bet it. And if you win ATS, get your payback, right? So let me run that, and then I'm also gonna. That part ran quick. What runs a little slower, I guess I'll just have to wait for this to stop running. It takes a little time. Is that anywhere where I bet two sides of the game, I'm going to go through all those games, and there's a lot of games here. There's 15,000 results in those 31 seasons, so it's going to take a little while to match up the two, just the way I've got the code. But we'll no bet those basically. So if one team that's meet that criteria. They're scoring a lot of points and not giving up. So two power teams meet each other. You wouldn't bet both sides. You'd no bet it. And so when I'm putting this 2,000 in, I'm betting both sides. I want it to back it out. So you need to recurse through 30,000 or 15,000 games, which kind of sucks. Okay, the data came back, and basically it's going to tell you it's minus, over 30 years over here up in the cell. And I've done the same thing here. It's minus 2. I mean, you would have bet 3 million, 2,000 a game. You would have bet 3.67 million, 3.7 million, and you would have got back 3.4 million. So we would have lost almost $300,000. And on a season, your max out of pocket, you would have needed a bankroll of over 40,000. Of course, it's a loser. That's basically you're hitting 48%. So that's not a good way to do it throughout the season. I've got a broken down season. Some years you win, like the 61, 1985, 1986, you lose. And they average out. So it's just there's a lot of variability in doing that method. So it's just not a good method. I mean, like I said when I was trying to explain the charts, you need to know that they're going to end in that regards. And so let me do it again. Oops, I don't want to do Google. Come on. Let me do it again. Same scenario, and let's just go a little bit deeper. So maybe after game 6, I'll be betting a lot less. So let's just do let's do the second half of the season. So anything greater than 8, so 9, 10, just to see. I mean, if there's a good chance if they're averaging that many through the first 8 games that they'll average. I mean, they got to tail off in the second half, right? To get below that number, it's going to run and it's going to eliminate the duplicates right off. I'm looking at W1 and it's telling me it's 92,000 to start with, and I'm sure it'll eliminate some of that duplicate bets. And it's done. A lot less bets you would have done, but it's still a loser. You're 92,000. Of course, you're just making less bets. As a percentage, your out of pocket would have been minus 36,000. You're 49%, so you're still less than 50%. So not a good strategy. So that's a myth debunked.